Hi folks. A couple days ago I posted a video on my channel wherein I announced that my next build was going to be the 1/32nd scale Pfalz D.IIIA by Aviatic. And in that video I mentioned that one of the issues I was still struggling with was finding some good high quality rigging line that I could work with successfully. I've had a lot of frustrations with various materials. Lo and behold, I got a comment back and then a follow-up email from a gentleman in New Zealand, Gary Boxall, who turns out to be an extraordinary modeler and the author and photographer of a number of amazing ebooks that are available, which show step by step how to build just incredible planes, several of those being Wingnut wings kits. And in his email, Gary offered and said, would you like to review one of my ebooks? I'll send you the file, and I said, yeah, I'd be delighted. The file arrived and pulled it up, downloaded it as a PDF. And what I have here is the ebook, the title page here appearing, Building the Wingnut Wings Pfalz D.IIIA. There are 361 pages in this book, this ebook. If you're willing, or if you've got a laser printer, it's probably doable. With an inkjet printer, probably not a good idea to try and print all of that, but that's okay, because each of those pages, of course, opens up on a screen to lovely pictures and a very thorough step-by-step guide how to build the Wingnut Wings Pfalz D.IIIA. Bit of a mistitle, because in this book, Gary actually shows and demonstrates step by step, for the most part, how he built two D.IIIAs and then modified one to the D3. So let's take a look here just to give you folks an idea of what's contained in this book. It would take quite a while to, here's the table of contents. We've got a few pages about the kit, about Gary, then about the first build, the Eugen Simple Comps Pfalz D.IIIA. And then there's a tutorial on rigging. There's the second D.IIIA, which starts on page 236. There's another tutorial about masking over decals. And then there's the third build, which is a conversion of a Wingnut Wings D.IIIA back to the D3, and then there are appendices. Now, when I look at the pictures that Gary took and that were put together, compiled together in this amazing ebook, I'm reminded of when I saw the movie The Blue Max decades and decades ago, and when Bruno Stackel reports to the Staffel, and he is asked by his commanding officer, so what sort of planes did you fly and train on? And he said, oh, an old outdated Pfalz. The commanding officer says, well, that's what you'll be flying here. And Bruno is not happy. Well, there's a lot of, not controversy, opinion that the Pfalz D3 wasn't the plane, certainly wasn't the plane that came along near the end of the war, the Fokker D7, and in fact did not compare favorably to the Albatross D5 and D5A. But it was made in sufficient quantity and served at a lot of aerodromes, Staffels, and more importantly, at least for a model builder, it's really a beautiful, beautiful plane, as this model attests to. So this gives you some idea of the process that's used step by step. The Gary shows how he step by step builds up modifies, enhances various pieces as he goes through the kit, this being the pilot's seat. And he does several different versions, 3 in fact, so all with slight variations on a theme, built a little bit differently, using some extra, parts, materials, to get just these lifelike features. And there's the 3rd version there. And this is the basically the composition of the entire book as you go through, piece by piece, step by step. Gary will show the pieces, point out important tips. Here's a shot from the instruction manual saying, make sure that you have removed all of the pin marks on the back side of part A34 to avoid fitting problems in the end. What's really neat is that he then shows assembly of subcomponents step by step, which of course are far superior even to the wonderful drawings that are, the artwork that is in the instruction manual that is provided by Wingnut Wings. A portion of the interior frame pre-painted, and it gives you a really good sense of how exactly these important and critical pieces fit together. And why that's so important is because of the very slight, tight tolerances within the model. Here he shows putting of course, the frame in one side of the fuselage as you let the glue cement dry to make sure everything will be properly fitted when the fuselage is closed up. When he uses paints, liquids, materials, he always shows what he's using. So you've got a very clear set of information about the type, the color, the manufacturer, and then shows step by step how he turns boring styrene into realistic pieces. In this case, 2 different variations on the instrument panel. This is something I hadn't seen before, but he not only, put in the wood staining on the floorboard, the flooring in the cockpit, he weathered, and I literally weathered it with grass, leaves, dirt, and rightly so, said, well, in the real plane, they would have gotten pretty grubby. Never seen that before, and of course, it looks fantastic. The photography of the detail work is just amazing, up close and personal. So here you see 2 different variations in terms of paint, color, and treatment, because he's building 2 models simultaneously here. So 2 different frames, one in painted over where the wood is painted over with a gray-green, and then the other in the more natural, I guess I'll call, or just varnished treatment. And through and through, from the ammunition container, again showing all of the materials, aftermarket parts, cartridge belts for the machine guns, the finishing, again showing the fitting as the interiors are come together. I'm not lingering on too much here because now we're just on page 51, so about 310 to go. But I think you get a sense, Then he'll even refer back, just as Wingnut Wings does in their manual, to real pictures or pictures of the actual plane. But as good as Wingnut Wings' instructions are, and they're great, there's something about these beautiful full-size photographs showing partial build as it progresses that is really helpful. A deconstruct here. I think this is of the compass. Yeah. So how he deconstructed the compass on the floor, and then put it back together again. You know, the various instruments, because a lot of the build for a Wingnut Wings kit is internal, is that internal cockpit, internal frame. A lot of the actual parts are in there. And if you get those right and properly seated and everything in the right place, you'll have far fewer problems, you know. And if you don't, you're going to have some issues in terms of closing up the fuselage. But it's very hard not to appreciate the way that Gary presents his build and shows, and then describes with very helpful prose how he actually constructed it. The what, the why, and the how is always addressed. There's a fairly significant section on the Spandau machine guns, those that come with the kit, as well as options of using aftermarket Spandau machine guns to achieve a spectacular fit and effect. And then a comparison, you know, he's doing the weathering now between originals. And then, of course, something that I think is very applicable to many of the Wingnut Wings kits is the whole section on the engine, the Benz, Mercedes-Benz. This is the 160, 170 horsepower engine, but the construct for the various 6 cylinders is very similar. So you get, you know, a step-by-step of how he took a very nice model and then added a little extra wiring and tubing, the paints, shades, stains he used, wiring to at a very fine level, you know. Spark plugs and a description of how those were made, how he did it, you know. And you get the sense that, you know, this is Concours award-winning quality modeling, and the presentation is just superb. Again, I like the fact that he always shows, this book always shows the relevant shades, colors, paints, pigments that are used to achieve the effects step by step. And of course, there are 2 engines there because he's building 2 Pfalzes simultaneously, then fitted into the cockpit. And again, while the instructions from Wingnut Wings have wonderful artwork, photographs of in-process, especially that you can blow up onto the big screen, are invaluable and can be a big help. Not just the tips for doing something a bit different, but just the basic tips about doing it right without running into headaches. Getting everything sealed up now. There, we finally closing up the fuselage, and we're still only on page 103. But of course, the sections on preparing wings, elevators, rudders, adding PE, step by step, even such things as modifying and enhancing the tail skid. There's the stock with that little attachment point removed because Gary's going to modify it. And with bungee cords, homemade bungee cord out of metal, soft metal. And the result will be spectacular. Landing gear. I think you're getting the sense here. You know, one could actually use this book for building the model and basically just referring to the instruction booklet for identifying the picture of the part. Which part do I need to snip off the tree or sprue? But from there on, you can pretty much build it. You can build it from this guide. and probably with more sense of assurance that you're getting everything right. Nice picture showing how he masked up all the open parts there to put on the white. And he did use a base white because he's going to be using for one of these the aviatic lozenge camouflage, and that works best. He also then, does some undertones, pre-shading on the fuselage there, which will end up being green. But the wings, top and bottoms of both wings, start out with a white base color. Step by step, the masking, the process of achieving the livery. This is plane number 1. And of course, he'll keep. There's the process of course, applying and then adding weathering to the brilliant Lozenge decals from Aviatic, which he judges to be superior, and I would agree with that, than the ones provided in the kit from Cartograph. Different feel to them, and they work they're very fine but strong, and they work really well. Whole process of weathering up, parts. And you can see now, as it gets close, what's happening. There's a whole section on rigging, very detailed. You get that process of how to do the rigging step by step with the recommended brands. And then he does it all over again. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah. This is version 2. If you didn't like the first one, and of course you're going to like it, but if you want to see a different way to go about it, this is the livery he chose for the second one, which gets about another 80 pages. Again, showing some of the, and then what he's going to do with his final version is the D.IIIA had internal machine guns and a different tail. So there, the focus on those last pages is the modifications he made to put the Spandau machine guns inside the fuselage, and then modified the tail accordingly. There you can see it's from the stock piece, but cut it down. And the end result is this plane. So 3 different versions, 3 for the price of 1. I believe that the list price for this ebook was Australian $20. I'll put a link in. I might be wrong about that. In any event, it's a guide that would be helpful to the most experienced modeler, as well as to somebody who's just starting out on a Wingnut Wings kit. Of course, if you're just starting out on a Wingnut Wings kit, probably makes sense if you've had some experience with Great War airplanes, just as some background. But you're going to get, basically an extraordinary diagnostic of how to go about building a superb model. There are generic tips. There are tips specific to the particular model. All of the color callouts are there. Their prose explains exactly what Gary did step by step to create these planes. And in one sense, it might be nice to have a Bible that you could put on the shelf, but I can't imagine what the cost of that would be. And being able to use an ebook, put it up on the screen as you're working your way through a Pfalz D.IIIA or some other Wingnut Wings kit, where you can just refer back to some of the generic stuff here as a guide, I think would be extraordinarily helpful. So again, there will be a link to the actual model in KLP Publishing, and my thanks to Gary, and just incredible modeling and skills. He lives in New Zealand, by the way. He originally hails from the United Kingdom, but moved to New Zealand a decade or two ago, I think, memory serves me correctly. Anyway, I really appreciate that he reached out to help me with a suggestion on rigging line, and very grateful for this beautiful ebook. And if you're into great war airplanes, if you're into Wingnut Wings, I don't think you could find a better how-to guide than this one. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.